Hey guys, tonight we're plunging headfirst into a world of ancient vows and questionable customs. The medieval marriage that you probably wouldn't survive, at least not with your modern sensibilities intact. You're gonna see how children were betrothed before they could walk, how love was traded like wool at the market, and how one wrong move could leave you locked in an unwanted union for life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is. Drop your location and your local time down below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease in to tonight's journey together. Your life begins in a cradle of velvet and wood, but your future is already being whispered about over a flickering hearth. Your parents' concerned with alliances, property, and reputation are sealing your fate before you can even toddle. Historians still argue whether these medieval betrothals were truly binding from infancy or simply symbolic, but what's certain is that your name is already paired with another's on some dusty parchment. You're not alone though. In noble households across Europe, babies are promised to each other like trade goods little alliances to secure peace or bolster wealth. Your father might be a minor baron with 3 goats and a crumbling tower, but he's determined to see you wed to the miller's son or the merchant's daughter, depending on who's got the fattest purse. You're not exactly worried about this yet after all. You're still chewing on the corner of a wooden spoon, but the grown-ups around you are already calculating how your tiny, gurgling self might one day boost a family standing. Meanwhile, your mother is busy weaving a layette embroidered with your family's crest, hoping to impress your future in-laws. You might be an infant, but your value is already being weighed like a bushel of apples at market. In some corners of Europe, the church frowns on these child betrothals, but out in the countryside, practicality and survival outweigh any priestly warnings. You're paraded around as a prize at feasts. No one's too worried if you're drooling on your future spouse's sleeve, as long as the promise is made. These pledges are witnessed by neighbors, family, and the occasional traveling minstrel who will later turn your tale into a cautionary tune about the hazards of marrying too young. It's not all political scheming sometimes. These child marriages do blossom into true partnerships, especially if the couple grows up together, learning each other's quirks long before their wedding night. But more often than not, it's a stark reminder that in the medieval world, children aren't children for long. You'll be expected to honor this match when you're older, and breaking the promise can lead to feuds that last generations. In the noble courts, you might even be whisked away to live with your future in-laws as a page or lady-in-waiting, ensuring the bond holds tight. You're still more concerned with learning to walk than you are with wedding feasts, but already, the weight of your future is being stitched into your baby clothes. And here's a quirky tidbit. In some parts of medieval Germany, babies' cradles would be placed side by side at betrothal feasts, as if the infants themselves were already sharing a marriage bed. A little unsettling, sure, but it was meant to show that the bond was as cozy and as permanent as those swaddling blankets. The crackling fire at your feet flickers on, and you can almost hear the whispers of mothers promising each other's children's futures, the clink of silver goblets toasting your name. You squirm in your swaddling clothes, blissfully unaware that in a few short years this cozy cradle will become a gilded cage. Your childhood rushes by faster than you realize, and soon enough, you're old enough to care about your appearance whether you like it or not. Medieval beauty rituals are a bizarre blend of herbs, superstition, and a dash of what might charitably be called creative thinking. And yes, if you're going to endure it all, if you want to stand a chance at catching the eye of your intended spouse, assuming you're not already married off before you can even recite the Lord's Prayer. Let's start with your face, which apparently needs to glow like the moon itself. Donkey milk face masks are all the rage among the noble ladies, and while the milk is supposed to soften your skin, you're pretty sure the donkey doesn't enjoy it one bit. You also dab your cheeks with crushed rose petals, because fragrant skin is better than sweet words in the court of lovers, so the village gossips say. Historians still argue whether these potions actually worked, but no one denies that medieval folks believed in them wholeheartedly. The more outlandish, the better. You might even rub a paste of ground almonds and honey on your face, because radiant skin was a medieval must-have. At least it's sweet enough to eat, though you're advised not to, of course. Your hair, that crowning glory of medieval beauty, must be as glossy as a river trout's back. There's no shampoo bottle in sight, so you rely on a mixture of herbs, rosemary, mint, and sometimes even ashes, because, as it turns out, lye soap can be a bit harsh on delicate locks. And don't get me started on medieval teeth cleaning. Chewing on twigs, rinsing with wine, anything to keep your smile as bright as a polished dagger. But it's not just about pampering yourself, it's about proving your worth. Your mother fusses over you like a hen with her last chick, making sure you're as fresh-faced and sweet-smelling as the day you were born. After all, your father's negotiations hinge on you looking like the best investment in the county. A fringe tidbit here. Some medieval girls were taught to sleep with slices of raw veal on their cheeks, supposedly to keep them plump and dewy. Imagine waking up next to a raw steak every morning. Talk about a beauty nightmare. But hey, beauty is pain. Or at least, that's the story they whisper as they rub ointments on your skin by candlelight. Of course, if you're a peasant, you're not about to waste good food on your face. Instead, you might rely on a little barley water rinse to smooth out those rough patches. Or you simply let your natural glow okay, your healthy diet of turnips, and Alice speak for itself. No matter how you're scrubbing, plucking, or perfuming, you're also getting an earful of marriage advice. Smile like a saint, your aunt says. Stand like a queen, your cousin adds. It's all part of the show. Because your looks in, let's face it, your family's land heir, your best bargaining chips in this world. And so you sit by the smoky hearth, breathing in the sharp tang of rosemary and the warm crackle of the fire, feeling both hopeful and a little nauseous from the donkey milk mask sliding down your chin. Because one thing's certain, in the medieval world, beauty isn't just in the eye of the beholder, it's in the deal, the dowry, and the destiny that's already been decided for you. All those beauty potions and donkey milk masks come down to this. Your worth, calculated like a market day haggle over bushels of apples. Your father anxious, proud, and maybe a little too fond of the illicits by the flickering fire and weighs your future against a stack of coins and cows. This is the bride price, and it's the ultimate medieval negotiation. You're worth more than your weight in silver, at least that's what your father says. He puffs out his chest and insists that your dowry should rival that of the miller's daughter down the lane, who's rumored to be worth 3 cows, 2 sheep, and a promising bit of meadow. Historians still argue whether these bride prices were more about family honor or cold, hard economics, but either way, your fate is bartered over tankards of beer and low voices at the hearth. It's not exactly romantic. Your mother hisses that the neighbor's daughter got a silver brooch as part of her bride price, so surely you deserve more, maybe a small plot of land, or at least a goat with a shiny bell. You're caught in the middle, trying not to let your hopeful heart get too attached to the idea of love, because in this world, love is a luxury. The real deal is land, livestock, and alliances. You're brought out to stand before your father's gesta, living testament to the family's honor. Your hair brushed until it shines, your dress stiff with embroidery. You feel more like a prized falcon on a noble's wrist than a person. A few cousins smirk at the spectacle, but you're too busy trying to stand still, to seem calm, to breathe. A quirky tidbit for you. In some regions, fathers would sweeten the bride price negotiations by bragging about their daughter's domestic skills, like how well you can churn butter or spin fine thread. Forget your gentle voice or shy smile. It's your ability to manage a household that clinches the deal. The negotiations drone on for days, sometimes weeks, while you listen from behind a wooden screen. There's talk of tithes and taxes, of feudal obligations that twist around you like ivy. Your name is dropped into conversations like a prized relic. She's a fair girl, and her mother's lands are fertile. You can almost hear the weight of those words pressing on your shoulders. You'd think your father might ask you what you want, but of course that's not how it works. Your wishes are as invisible as the flickering ghosts in the corner of the hall. It's the bride price that matters, because it's not just about you, it's about your family, your bloodline, and the fragile alliances that might hold your world together for another generation. And yet, there's something oddly comforting in the steady drone of the haggling voices. This is the rhythm of medieval life. The slow burn of negotiations, the calculated glances across a wooden table, the low hum of a world that measures worth in livestock and silver, not whispered promises in the moonlight. You watch the flicker of the firelight on your father's face and wonder if, somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembers that you're more than a bride price. But for now, you're the thread in the tapestry, The final piece in the puzzle of Survival Land, you'll play your part, whether you like it or not. When the haggling is done and the bride price is paid, the next step is to ensure you look the part of a bride fit for the medieval world. It's time for the dress layers upon layers of velvet, brocade, and fur that weigh almost as much as a newborn calf. You stand still, arms raised like a mannequin, while your mother and the village seamstress fuss with pins and lace. You're not exactly thrilled about the process. The dress is heavy and stifling, made to impress the whole parish, but not exactly designed for comfort. In the flickering candlelight, the rich red velvet gleams, but it's scratchy as hay against your skin. Historians still argue whether the elaborate gowns were more for status or actual beauty, but either way, you're learning to smile through the discomfort. Your mother sighs over every seam, every bead sewn into the bodice, determined that no one will think her daughter is anything less than noble even if your family is more about cows and barley than coronets and gold. She tugs at your sleeves, tightens the lacing until you can barely breathe. "You'll look magnificent," she says with a teary-eyed pride that almost makes you forget how much you'd rather be in a simple woolen shift. There's a fringe tidbit in these wedding ensembles. Some brides wore small charms or even bits of bone hidden in the folds of their skirts to ward off evil spirits. So not only are you sweating under pounds of cloth, you're also a walking good luck charm. Superstitions cling to you like a second skin. And of course, the dress isn't complete without a veil to hide your face from jealous spirits or curious neighbors. The veil's thin gauze softens the world around you, turning the flickering tapers and snickering cousins into blurred shadows. It's as if you're seeing the world from underwater, every sound muffled and distant. Your shoes are stiff, new leather dyed to match the dress, and they pinch your toes as you take your first steps down the aisle of your own home, practicing for the big day. Your mother hums a tune you've known since you were small, a lullaby that once soothed you to sleep but now only tightens the knot in your stomach. In the village square, there's gossip about a plague outbreak in a neighboring county, just what you need on your wedding day. You're told to tuck a sprig of rosemary in your bodice for luck, though you're not sure it will do much against a fever. But this is the medieval world, where danger is always waiting in the wings, and weddings must go on. The morning of your wedding, you're woken before dawn by the smell of bread baking and the sound of your mother's soft weeping. You feel like a prize at a feast, trussed up and displayed for the world. You're nervous, of course you are. But in the medieval world, there's little room for doubt or nerves. You'll step into that heavy dress, you'll smile through the pain of the laces digging into your ribs, and you'll stand tall, because that's what's expected of you. As you walk to the chapel or perhaps just the village green, depending on your family's means, the weight of the dress seems to press down on your shoulders, a physical reminder of the new life you're stepping into. You're no longer the girl chasing chickens through the yard. You're the bride, the future of your family's name, and you're wrapped in velvet and pearls to prove it. You're finally at the place where your life will change forever, where your childhood ends and your role as a wife begins. But here's the thing. Not all medieval weddings happen in a grand cathedral, echoing with Latin hymns. Sometimes it's a dusty parish church, sometimes a noble court filled with scheming lords, and sometimes, yes, even a smoky tavern where the laughter of drunken guests drowns out the solemn words of the priest. You feel the cold stone of the church floor beneath your feet as you walk down the aisle, each step echoing through the wooden pews. The flickering candles blur in the corners of your vision, and you swear you can hear your own heartbeat louder than the quiet murmurs of the congregation. Historians still argue whether these church weddings were more about love or law, but one thing is certain. They were binding in every sense of the word. The priest's words are heavy with meaning, each syllable a link in the chain of your future. He talks of duty and obedience, of a wife's role in the home, and you can feel the weight of it all settling around your shoulders like a mantle of iron. Your groom stands beside you, shifting from foot to foot, and you're both caught in the solemn dance of tradition. But not every medieval couple has the luxury of a church wedding. Out in the fields, where the barley sways and the birds sing, some marriages are sealed by simple hand-fasting rituals, a brief prayer, or even a private promise under the stars. And in the smoky corners of taverns, where ale flows like a river, some couples exchange vows with a cup of mead and a sly grin priest, no Latin, just the promise of two hearts trying to beat together in a world that rarely makes room for love. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some medieval couples would literally jump over a broomstick together as a symbol of their union, a custom that hints at older, pre-Christian beliefs woven into the Christian wedding tapestry. No matter where your vows are spoken, the village gathers to watch. Old women whisper behind their shawls, children dart between legs, and everyone waits for that moment when two lives become one, no matter how fleeting the joy might be. You feel their eyes on you, the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on your head like a crown. And just when you think the ceremony is done, there's one final flourish: the bedding ceremony. Yes, you heard right. Because in the medieval world, marriage isn't real until it's been, well, proven. Your friends and family might even gather around the bedchamber, their laughter and cheers, turning your first night together into a public affair. Talk about an audience. You stand there, your hand trembling in your groom's, the faint scent of rosemary still clinging to your dress. Outside, the sky has turned the color of a dying rose, and the bells in the distance toll as if they're counting down the seconds of your freedom. This is the medieval world where marriage is as much about show as it is about survival, and where you'll find your place, whether in a church, a court, or a tavern filled with raucous songs and spilled mead. The priest's final blessing fades into memory, and now you stand at the threshold of the marriage beta threshold, far more public than you'd ever imagined. In the flickering glow of rushlight candles, you're not alone. Your friends, your family, even the priest himself might be lurking just beyond the bedchamber door. Because in the medieval world, consummation isn't just personal, it's communal. You might be blushing so hard you could melt the wax in the candles, but tradition says the bedding must be witnessed. Sometimes they'll lead you in a boisterous procession from the wedding feast to your new home, singing ribald songs and toasting your future with every step. You're supposed to laugh and blush along, even if you'd rather crawl into the nearest hayloft and hide. Historians still argue whether the bedding ceremony was actually witnessed in full, or if it was more about leading you to the door and leaving the rest to the imagination. But one thing's for sure: the bedding was considered essential. A marriage wasn't valid until it had been sealed in flesh, and that meant everyone had a stake in making sure it happened. A quirky tidbit to lighten the mood. In some regions, it was customary to throw shoes at the bed for luck. Yes, shoes. As you're trying not to trip over the hem of your nightgown, someone's hurling a scuffed leather boot at your feet and telling you it's for good fortune. Let's just say it's not the most romantic moment. The air is thick with the scent of rushes and tallow candles, and you feel the weight of the velvet curtains pulled around the bed of flimsy barrier between you and the curious world outside. Your heart hammers in your chest, every breath a prayer that this night will go quickly, that tomorrow you'll be just another married woman at market with no one the wiser. But of course, in the medieval world, nothing is ever truly private. There's a certain pride in the consummation, a sense that your marriage is now truly real, not just in the eyes of the church, but in the minds of everyone who watched you take those first trembling steps. You wonder if this night will be the first of many, or just the start of a long, silent companionship. Because in the medieval world, love isn't always part of the bargain. It's about duty, and duty begins tonight, with the laughter of your friends still ringing in your ears. The bedding ceremony might seem like an odd relic to us, but it was a way of binding two families together in the most intimate of ways. It was a promise loud, embarrassing, and impossible to ignore that life would go on, that the line would continue, and that even in the flickering darkness, you'd find your place. And as you close your eyes, the heavy blankets pulled up around your shoulders, you can almost pretend the world beyond the curtains doesn't exist. For tonight at least, you're the bride, the center of the story, and tomorrow, well, tomorrow will come soon enough. Morning light seeps through the wooden shutters, and you rise stiff-limbed from a bed that still feels foreign. The echoes of laughter from the night before cling to the walls, mingling with the stale scent of spilled ale and sweat. But the world won't wait for you to gather your wits, because in the medieval world, a wedding isn't complete without a feast that rivals the harvest. Your stomach rumbles as the scent of roasting meat drifts in from the kitchen. The household is already bustling, servants scurrying with trenchers of bread and wheels of cheese. There's a sense of urgency in the air. No one wants to miss the chance to show off their hospitality. And you're expected to look radiant, even if you barely slept a wink. Feasting is no small affair here. Tables are set with more food than you've ever seen in one place. Steaming pies, stuffed with eels and veal, roasted peacocks with their feathers pinned back in gaudy display, and sweetmeats dripping with honey. Historians still argue whether these feasts were genuine celebrations or calculated shows of wealth and power, but either way, you'll have to smile through every bite. Before you can eat, though, there's a moment of ritual, because medieval weddings aren't just about what goes in your mouth. You're expected to fast beforehand, a small act of purification for the gluttony to come. Your stomach protests, but you bite your tongue, knowing that the real test is yet to come. A fringe tidbit for you. At some medieval weddings, the bride was expected to break her fast by taking a small bite of bread and salt, a symbol of prosperity and protection. Simple enough, but you're so jittery you nearly choke on it. Then the feasting begins in earnest. You're perched at the high table, flanked by your new husband and your parents, each mouthful punctuated by raucous toasts. You can't help but marvel at the chaos. Musicians thumping away on their lutes, children chasing scraps beneath the table, and the village elders offering loud, if not exactly helpful, advice about married life. Your dress feels even heavier now, every bite of roasted swan weighing you down like a stone. You can't quite relax, not with so many eyes on you, measuring your every move. Your mother's voice rings in your ears. Eat delicately, drink politely, and above all smile. And smile you do, even when your groom tries to feed you a bite of boar's head in front of everyone, his hand trembling slightly as he lifts the fork. You catch his eye and wonder just for a moment if there might be some sweetness here, some small corner of tenderness in the midst of all this noise. But of course, there's no room for softness when there are debts to settle and alliances to confirm. Between courses, your father and his friends talk of land and taxes, their voices low and urgent. Every bite you take seems to echo with the weight of those conversations, a reminder that marriage is business as much as pleasure. Still, you cling to the small joys, the laughter of your childhood friends as they steal sweetmeats from the table, the flicker of the fire in the hearth, the soft strains of music weaving through the smoky air. Because in the medieval world, feasting is survival, a brief respite from the hunger and hardship that waits just beyond the hall. You take a sip of mead and let the sweet warmth settle your nerves. Tonight, the feasting will end, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges. But for now, you're the bride, the center of the revelry, and for one bright moment, you let yourself believe that this world of endless toasts and dancing might hold a small sliver of happiness just for you. The echoes of the wedding feast linger in your bones long after the tables have been cleared and the last song has faded into the smoky rafters. But in the medieval world, your marriage isn't just a feast, it's a carefully laid chessboard of power, and you're a piece to be moved as the game demands. You wake the next morning to the soft scrape of your mother's hand smoothing your hair, her eyes shining with the knowledge that your marriage isn't about love, it's about alliances. She whispers stories of ancient family grudges and secret pacts, weaving your life into the tapestry of deals and debts that hold your world together. Your new husband's lands border yours, or maybe his father's title will lend your family some much-needed protection against the next greedy lord. Historians still argue whether these marriages of power ever left room for affection, but in the hushed corridors of the manor, you learn that love is a luxury for the poor. For you, it's duty. At dinner, the conversation is a dance of veiled threats and half smiles. Your father-in-law asks about your father's harvest, and though his tone is mild, you can hear the hunger beneath it, because every good marriage is a promise of prosperity. You keep your head bowed, your hands folded in your lap, while the men barter your future in words as sharp as any blade. A quirky tidbit. In some noble households, newlywed couples were expected to show their guests a glimpse of their marriage bed, just a peek at the neatly turned sheets and the tokens of union, as if a glimpse of linen could prove an alliance was secure. You're learning quickly that your new role is less about lace veils and tender whispers, and more about keeping the peace between two families who've measured out their fates in acres and grain. The hearth feels colder now, even with the fire crackling and the scent of spiced wine drifting through the hall. But there are small moments of grace. Your husband catches your eye across the table and offers a faint, uncertain smile. You wonder if he feels the weight of this arrangement as keenly as you do, if his shoulders ache with the same burden of duty. For a fleeting second, you dare to hope that there might be a kindness there buried beneath the careful courtesy. Yet outside the manor walls, the world doesn't care about your tender hopes. The local lord demands taxes, and your father frets over the harvest. You're a wife now, and that means your days are filled with endless calculations. how to stretch the grain, how to soothe your husband's pride, how to keep the manor running in a world that never stops hungering for more. You watch the shadows of the hearth dance on the cold stone floor, and you understand. In the medieval world, a bride isn't just a wife, she's a diplomat, a caretaker, a bridge between families. Your wedding might have been a feast, but your marriage is a campaign and you'll have to fight for your place at every turn. So you lift your chin, let the warmth of the fire steady you, and take your place at the table. Because in this world of bartered brides and calculated alliances, you've learned the first rule of survival. You're not just a piece on the board, you're the one who knows how to play. If you're lucky, you're old enough to understand the weight of these alliances. But more often than not, you're still more girl than woman, your hair barely long enough to weave a maiden's braid. Because in the medieval world, age is just another bargaining chip, and your childhood ends the moment your family says it does. You might still be playing with dolls when they tell you it's time to wed. Your hands, small and clumsy, fumble with the fine embroidery of your wedding dress while your heart thuds like a drum in your chest. Historians still argue whether medieval law truly allowed child marriages to be fully consummated, but what's clear is that betrothals and even formal ceremonies happened when you were barely tall enough to peek over the table. In noble courts, teenage brides are paraded before wealthy suitors, some younger than you, some old enough to be your father. A girl of 12 is considered marriageable, though she might still dream of fairy tales by the hearth. Your new husband might be just a few years older, his chin smooth, his voice cracking like the firewood. Or he might be a hardened man, his eyes sharp with ambition, your youth just another asset in the long game of alliances. A fringe tidbit to shiver your spine. Some regions celebrated marriages of children so young that the bride's cradle still sat in the corner of the room, a small reminder that innocence and obligation walk hand in hand. The villagers watch your wedding with eyes that have seen it all before. They nod in approval at the promise of strong sons and plump dowries, their own daughters waiting in the wings for the same fate. You want to protest your leave, there's time to grow, to learn, to be a child a little longer. But in the medieval world, there's no space for childish dreams when alliances are at stake. Your mother presses your hair into tight braids and smooths the sleeves of your dress, her voice gentle even as her hands are firm. "You're ready," she whispers, though you're not sure you believe her. Outside, the world smells of smoke and sweet cider, a strange blend of harvest, joy, and quiet fear. The feast that follows is as loud and bright as any you've seen, but your laughter feels thin in your throat. You're no longer a child, no longer the girl who chased geese in the yard or sang with the other children under the summer moon. You're a bride, bound by vows that were made before you even learned to read the Psalms. In the quiet of your new home, you trace the carvings on the wooden bedpost, your fingers trembling. You wonder if your new husband, boy, or man feels the same knot in his stomach, the same swirl of confusion and hope. You wonder if there's any room in this world for a girl's heart to find its own rhythm, or if that's a luxury you'll have to set aside for good. Because in the medieval world, marriage is never just about love. It's about survival, about family, about a girl learning to carry the weight of generations on shoulders that have barely grown strong enough to bear it. The day after your wedding, the house still hums with laughter and the faint scent of roasting meats, but your new reality settles in fast and it isn't all sweetmeats and dancing. In the medieval world, wedding vows bind you tighter than the laces of your stiff velvet dress, and marriage can be as brutal as the iron pot hanging over the kitchen fire. Your wedding night is barely a memory when the next morning brings its own trials. Your mother-in-law eyes you with the cool scrutiny of a hawk, measuring every move you make, every clumsy step you take as you learn the rhythm of this new household. Historians still argue whether medieval wives had any real voice in the home, but in your new life, you find that respect is earned with quiet diligence and endless patience. Meals are another battlefield. Your husband wants his stews thick and his bread crusty, and he doesn't hesitate to tell you so. You're supposed to be the lady of the house, but you're also the newest, smallest piece in this old, creaking manor. Your hands smell of yeast and soap, your back aches from stooping to scrub the floorboards, but you grit your teeth and keep moving. A quirky tidbit for you. Some medieval weddings included a ritual slapies, a literal slap across the bride's cheek as part of the ceremony. It was supposed to bring good luck or ward off evil spirits, but you can't help thinking it was just a taste of what was to come in a world where a wife's place was often learned at the edge of a hand. You try not to flinch when your husband's laughter grows too loud over the ale or when his friends slap each other on the back with a little too much force. A broken nose at the wedding feast isn't unheard of. A drunken cousin, a boast gone too farin, the bruises fade, but the lesson sticks. In the medieval world, marriage is sometimes a game of balance, of learning how to bend like a willow branch in a storm. You watch the hearth, the red coals pulsing like the heart of this new life, and you wonder if you'll ever find comfort here. You wonder if you're strong enough to weather the rough voices, the clatter of iron pots, the sudden silences that come when words go too far. But there are small mercies, too. Your husband's rough fingers brush yours when no one is watching, a fleeting moment of softness that hints at something more, a smile shared across the table, a quiet laugh when the hound steals a roast from the hearth. It's enough to keep you hoping that there's more to marriage than hard words and heavy hands. Outside, the village keeps turning, children playing in the dirt, the blacksmith's hammer ringing out a rhythm older than your vows. You realize that your marriage, for all its bruises and burdens, is part of that same pattern. You're one thread in the tapestry, woven tight and strong, and you'll find your placer, carve it out with your own two hands, because in the medieval world, love is never simple. It's messy, it's rough, and sometimes it's just a brief flicker of kindness in a life built on duty. But even in the roar of feasts and the echo of vows, you hold tight to the tiny hope that someday it might be enough. As the days turn to weeks, you learn that marriage isn't truly real in the medieval world until you've proven it body and soul. Consummation isn't just expected, it's demanded. And not just in the privacy of your own bed, but with the silent, sometimes not so silent approval of the entire household. It's a harsh truth, this public scrutiny of private life. The bedding ceremony might be over, but the questions linger in every glance, every raised eyebrow from the kitchen maid or the stable boy. Historians still argue whether the medieval obsession with consummation was about faith, property, or just plain curiosity. But for you, it's a heavy weight, a test you can't refuse. Your wedding night might have been a blur of fear and candlelight, but the pressure doesn't stop there. The priest might have blessed your union, but the midwife's quiet approval, the knowing smiles of your new mother-in-law, these are the final seals of legitimacy. In some villages, it's said that the bedding sheets must be displayed the next morning, a crude proof that your marriage is more than just words whispered in the dark. A quirky tidbit. Some noble houses had a special room called the witness chamber, where a few trusted elders would literally watch over the bedding to confirm the union was properly sealed. Not exactly the tender start you might have hoped for. You learn to keep your face calm, your voice steady, as these questions swirl around you like the smoke from the hearth. Your mother-in-law's eyes are sharp as a whetstone, her mouth a thin line of expectation. You're supposed to smile, to play the part of the dutiful wife, even when your heart is pounding in your chest like a drum. And yet, there's something strangely powerful in the act of consummation, too. A moment that belongs only to you and your husband, no matter how many curious whispers press against the door. You wonder if, in the small hours of the night, he feels that tooth hush of the world beyond the window, the soft rasp of breath in the darkness. Outside, the village moves on. The cattle must be driven to pasture, the ale barrels rolled from the cellar to the hall. But in the quiet of your marriage bed, there's a flicker of defiance, a tiny voice that says, this moment is yours, no matter how many blessings or witnesses are piled on top of it. You let that small hope warm you, even as the world demands proof of your union. Because in the medieval world, your body isn't just your own, it's part of a covenant, a promise that stretches from your father's hall to your husband's manor. And though you're still learning how to find your place in that promise, you know one thing for certain. No matter who's watching, this is your life now, and you'll claim it one heartbeat at a time. But not every union in the medieval world is as tidy or as holy as the priest's blessing would suggest. You learn that quickly enough, because while your own marriage might be proper, at least in the eyes of the church, there are unions out there that defy every rule you were taught to hold sacred. You hear the whispers in the market square, stories of cousin marriages that skirt the edge of scandal, of noble lords who wed their nieces to keep lands in the family. Historians still argue whether these close unions were more common than the church let on, but the reality is that land and blood were powerful lure strong enough to bend the rules of even the most pious parish priest. A fringe tidbit. In some corners of Europe, relics of questionable saints were said to bless these taboo unions, as if a splinter of bone could wipe away the sin of marrying your cousin. It's a curious blend of faith and folklore, and it's enough to make you wonder if the world has lost its mind. You watch from the sidelines, heart pounding, as the village gossips spin these tales like wool on a spindle. "Did you hear about the Baron's daughter?" they murmur. "Wedded to her uncle," and the priest turned a blind eye. You're supposed to be shocked your mother would have you cover your ears, but a part of you can't help but be fascinated. Because in this world of rigid vows and iron-bound duty, these unholy unions are proof that power always finds a way. It's not just the noble courts either. In the dusty corners of the countryside, where the priest's authority fades like the last rays of dusk, marriages happen without so much as a blessing. Lovers whisper vows beneath the hedgerows, and children are born into unions that no priest will ever acknowledge. You wonder what it would feel like to be part of one of those forbidden unions. To stand at the edge of the world, hand in hand with someone you shouldn't love, and defy the church and the village gossips all at once. But then you remember the weight of your own vows, the silent pressure of your father's honor, and you know it's not a choice you'll ever have. The air in the hall feels thick when you hear these stories, your fingers twisting in the folds of your dress as you try not to let your curiosity show. You're a wife now, your place secure, but the world is full of these half-hidden alliance-esque threads that could unravel everything if pulled too hard. And so, you keep your head down, your lips pressed into a polite smile, and you tell yourself that your own marriage is blessed and right. Because in the medieval world, the line between holy and unholy is thin as a wedding veil, and the only way to survive is to cling to the small truths you can hold in your heart. Life can turn on a breath, a whisper, a prayer, and in the medieval world, where death is as common as a cold breeze, and the line between wife and widow is thin as spun silk, you learn quickly that marriage doesn't always end in happily ever after. Sometimes, it ends at the edge of a grave. The funeral bells toll low and slow, a mournful echo in the stone walls of the manor. You stand there in your heavy widow's veil, the world blurred behind black lace, and you feel the weight of your new freedom or your new prison. Historians still argue whether medieval widows were truly free to choose their next step or if they were just another pawn to be claimed by the nearest male relative. If your husband was a minor lord or a wealthy yeoman, you might find yourself courted before the funeral feast is even over. A widow's dowry is a prize, and your mourning clothes do little to hide the sharp glances of those who would claim you next. The same neighbors who clucked their tongues at your wedding now murmur in the corner, already mapping out the next chapter of your life. A quirky tidbit. In some regions, it was considered bad luck for a widow to remarry within a year of her husband's death, a superstition meant to ensure the soul of the deceased wasn't troubled by the quick turn of events. But not everyone waits. In this world, land and lineage don't pause for grief. Your mother, if she's still living, might offer you tearful advice, her own memories of widowhood soft and sharp at once. She'll tell you to be cautious, to weigh your options, to remember that even as a widow, your worth is measured in cows, in coin, in the alliances you can bring. You walk through the hushed halls of your home, the echo of your footsteps, a constant reminder of the man who once shared them, his clothes still hang in the wardrobe, his boots by the hearth. You're supposed to mourn truly, deeply because it's the only armor you have against the world's greedy gaze. But beneath the widow's veil, your thoughts are your own. You remember the feel of the wedding ring on your finger, the press of his hand on yours, and you wonder if there's a chance, just a small, flickering chance to shape your own destiny this time. The village women watch you closely, their eyes full of questions they'll never dare ask out loud. Will you remarry? Will you join a convent and bury your heart with your husband's bones? Or will you find a way to stand alone in a world that rarely lets women stand at all? You close your eyes and breathe deep, the scent of ashes and beeswax candles filling your senses. In the medieval world, a widow's life is a second chance if she's brave enough to take it. And you? You're learning that bravery is a quiet thing, built on small steps and whispered prayers. You take one step forward, the heavy veil brushing your cheeks like a ghost caress, and you know that whatever comes next, you'll face it with your head held high. Because in this world of endless alliances and fleeting vows, you're still here, still breathing, and that's enough for now. The widow's veil doesn't stay in place forever. Sooner or later, you're drawn into the next dance of duty, and that means the question of your dowry is back on everyone's lips, like an echo of your first wedding day. In the medieval world, a dowry is more than a chest of coins or a flock of sheep. It's the price of your future, the leverage your family can wield to secure your place in this ever-turning wheel. You watch as the negotiations unfold again, this time with new voices at the table. Your father, if he's still living, speaks in low tones, his words measured like grain in the mill. If he's gone, your brother or uncle might step in, eyes sharp with the knowledge that your dowry could lift the family's fortune as or break them. Historians still argue whether medieval women had any say in these dealings, but you learn quickly that your silence is part of the bargain. Your dowry is a living thing, land that must be measured, sheep that must be counted, silver that must be weighed on the scales. And with each clink of coin, you feel your worth spelled out in the language of property. You're not just a woman, you're an asset, and your dowry is the proof. A fringe tidbit to lighten this heavy mood. In some villages, the dowry included not just the usual goods, but also some rather curious extras, like a prized goose to ensure fertility, or a carved wooden spoon to symbolize a wife's place at the hearth. Small tokens, but powerful in their symbolism. You stand in the corner, your veil pushed back now, your face a careful mask. The men haggle and joke, but you're listening to every word, every pause, every sharp glance. Because you know that your dowry is more than just money, it's your one small piece of power in a world where so little is truly yours. Sometimes the weight of it feels like a stone in your chest, pressing down with every polite smile and gentle nod. You want to shout that you're worth more than these coins and cows, that your heart beats with the same fierce rhythm as any man's. But you hold your tongue, because in this world, silence is often the only armor you have. Your mother, if she's there, gives your hand a small, comforting squeeze. She knows. She's walked this path before you, and she'll walk it again if it means keeping the family's honor safe. Her eyes tell you the one truth that matters. You're more than your dowry, even if the world refuses to see it. The sun slants through the narrow windows, painting golden stripes on the wooden floor, and you feel the weight of centuries in the dust motes that dance in the air. This is the medieval world where love is a luxury, and marriage is a transaction written in blood and sweat and the careful counting of silver coins. But even here, even now, you hold on to the small, bright spark of your own worth. You're more than the sum of your dowry, more than the weight of sheep and land. You're a wife, a daughter, a woman learning to carve her place out of the cold stone of the manor walls. And someday, you promise yourself, you'll find a way to let that truth shine through. The weight of coins and sheep and land lingers long after the dowry is settled, but even the most carefully negotiated marriage can't keep every heart in check. In the medieval world, love might be a luxury, but secrets thrive in every dark corner of the manor. You learn soon enough that a husband's eye can wander, and so can a wife's. The village women are quick to share the latest whispers, their voices low and urgent as they swap tales over the well or the market stall. Historians still argue whether medieval marriages were really so cold, or if love had its own quiet ways of blooming. But you know that in a world where alliances are written in blood and duty, hearts find their own crooked paths. You hear the stories, the merchant's wife who steals kisses with the handsome minstrel, the blacksmith's daughter who carries another man's child while her husband tends the forge. In noble halls, it's no different knights who return from war with a lady's favor tucked beneath their armor, ladies who linger too long in the orchard with a squire who is not their lord. A quirky tidbit. In some medieval courts, it was rumored that a woman who sprinkled her hair with the ashes of a burned love letter could keep her affair secret, though whether it worked or just made her hair smell like an old hearth is anyone's guess. For you, these tales are both caution and comfort. You watch your husband's eyes as he talks to the miller's daughter, the flicker of something in his voice that wasn't there before. Your stomach knots with worry, but you force a smile because in this world, jealousy is a luxury you can't afford. Yet you understand too, the ache of longing, the way a glance can light a fire in your chest, even if you know it can never be more than a spark. The way your heart beats faster when a traveling peddler leans in just a little too close, his breath warm and his eyes full of promises he can never keep. You learn the quiet language of stolen glances and half-finished sentences, the way love can slip between the cracks of duty and propriety. You know as dangerous adultery isn't just a sin in the medieval world, it's a crime that can bring ruin or worse. But still, you find yourself listening for the soft footfall in the dark, the gentle knock on the door that might never come. The world outside your door is hard and cold, but in the shadows, there's a fleeting warmth no matter how forbidden. And though you tell yourself you'll never be that woman, that you'll honor your vows until your last breath, you can't help but wonder what it would feel like to steal a moment for yourself. You close your eyes and let the thought flicker out like a candle in the wind. Because in this world of endless feast and endless duty, sometimes the smallest spark is all that keeps your heart alive. Yet for every soft glance and secret sigh, there's a harsh punishment waiting in the shadows. The medieval world doesn't look kindly on adultery. It's a betrayal that cuts deeper than any dagger, a stain that no amount of prayers can wash away. And if you're caught, the punishment isn't just for your heart, it's for your body and your soul. The village square has seen its share of shame. Stocks set up beneath the old oak, where the air smells of sweat and fear. You've heard the stories, whispered over rush baskets and bread ovens, of women locked in those wooden frames for all to see, their cheeks red with shame and the jeers of neighbors ringing in their ears. Historians still argue whether these public punishments were more about justice or spectacle, but for you, the line is clear as the crack of a whip. Your heart skips a beat when you see the stocks empty, waiting for the next soul to stumble. You wonder if the merchant's wife will be the next to wear the mark of betrayer, if it will be someone you know even better. A quirky tidbit to chill your blood. In some towns, a woman caught in adultery might have to wear a heavy iron bridle, a punishment so cruel it's known as the scold's bridle, a cage for her head, spikes for her tongue, because in the medieval world, a wandering heart can be silenced by iron. You think of your own quiet yearnings, the gentle smiles that you've tucked away, like pressed flowers in a book, and you feel the weight of those iron bridle spikes, even from a distance. Because you know the price of desire in this world, it's written in bruises and broken pride, in the cracked lips of a woman forced to confess her shame to the world. Your husband's voice sounds sharper when he speaks of honor, his eyes hard when he talks of betrayal. You nod along, your hands busy with your weaving, but inside you wonder how far he would go if your heart ever slipped beyond the bounds of your vows. You watch the village women, their heads bent low, their laughter cautious and thin. You see the marks that never fade, the quiet ways they learn to hide their hearts behind a careful smile. You understand that in this world, love is a risk, but punishment is a certainty. And so you walk the careful line. You keep your hands busy, your voice soft, your glance is fleeting. You promise yourself that you'll never be the woman in the stocks, never feel the iron bite of the scold's bridle. But late at night, when the hearth fire has burned low and the world is quiet, you still feel the whisper of that forbidden longing. Because in the medieval world, desire is a dangerous game, and the only way to survive is to play it so carefully that no one sees the cards you're holding close to your chest. Day by day, you learn that your marriage isn't just a bond between you and your husband. It's a contract with the land itself, a promise to the manor that you'll keep it running as sure as the mill wheel turns in the river. In the medieval world, marriage ties you not only to your husband but to the dusty fields, the dark woods, and the lords who claim them all. You're expected to do more than mind the hearth. You help tally the bushels of grain, watch over the stores of salted pork and dried apples, and count the coins for market day. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly held power in the home or whether it was all an illusion. But you know that without your careful hand, the manor would fall to ruin faster than a rotting thatch roof. The manor lord's steward visits often, his black robe trailing dust as he peers over the ledgers. Taxes are due, and he doesn't care if the barley harvest was poor or if the hens have gone broody and stopped laying. Your husband's shoulders tense when the steward's shadow darkens the door, and you learn to read the subtle signals. A tap of his finger on the table, a glance that says, "Be silent," a long pause that means the numbers aren't adding up, a fringe tidbit. In some manners, It was said that the lady of the house was responsible for brewing ale, so good it could win the loyalty of the entire village because nothing soothes a hard day's work like a foaming tankard of homebrew. You feel the weight of these small tasks and heavy burdens with every dawn. You learn to mend torn linens while calculating how many casks of cider are left in the cellar. You patch a child's tunic with one hand and stir a pot of pottage with the other, always mindful of the quiet power you hold because in the end, the manor's survival depends on more than the strength of a man's arm. And yet, for all your careful tending, you're also bound to the whims of your lord. When he demands more taxes or sends a summons for your husband to ride out to war, there's nothing you can do but watch him go and pray he comes back in one piece. You're tied to this land, to these dusty fields, as surely as the sheep in the meadow are tied to the shepherd's crook. You watch the sun rise over the low stone walls, the fields glinting with morning dew, and you know that your marriage is more than a promise made in church. It's a contract with the land itself, a promise to keep the hearth warm, the children fed, and the fields green. In the medieval world, your life is measured in seasons. The sowing of barley in the spring, the shearing of sheep in the summer, the gathering of apples in the fall. And through it all, you're there woven into the rhythm of it all. A wife, a keeper, a quiet power holding the manor's beating heart in your hands. The manor's fields stretch as far as your eye can see, but sometimes even that horizon isn't wide enough to contain the ambitions of those around you. In the medieval world, marriages often reached across borders and kingdoms, weaving alliances that could shape the fate of entire realms. And for you, that might mean a life of half-understood words and strange customs, far from the hearth, where you first learned to stir the pot. Your husband might be a younger son with no land of his own, sent off to wed the daughter of a foreign merchant to secure a trade router. Maybe you're the one sent away, packed into a creaking cart with your dowry packed in linen bundles. Historians still argue whether these cross-border marriages were driven more by politics or the desperate need for peace, but either way, you're caught up in the swirl of it all. You find yourself in a hall where the tapestries show scenes you've never seen before nights, with helms shaped like birds, dragons coiled in the margins of the woven threads. You try to understand the songs they sing at feasts, but the words twist on your tongue like unfamiliar herbs. And every night, you wonder if this new land will ever feel like home. A fringe tidbit: some traveling brides carried small wooden dolls dressed in the style of their new homeland, a curious little charm meant to help them learn the language and customs of their new family. It's a small comfort, tucked into your trunk between your best linen chemise and your mother's silver comb. You watch your husband's face as he speaks with his new in-laws, his voice careful and measured in a language you only half understand. You wonder if he feels as lost as you do, or if the weight of duty dulls the ache of distance. You smile politely, keep your head down, and learn to read the language of raised eyebrows and nods, even if the words themselves remain stubborn mysteries. The village women in your new home whisper behind their hands, their glances sharp as the knives they use to pare apples. You're the outsider, the foreign bride with the unfamiliar accent and the strange prayers. You feel their curiosity, their suspicion, and you know that you'll have to work twice as hard to earn a place at their hearth. But you're determined, because in the medieval world, a wife's duty doesn't end at the border. You learn to fold your new name around yourself like a second skin, to weave the customs of your new home into your own way of life. You let the foreign songs find a rhythm in your breath. The unfamiliar spices find their way into your cooking pot. And late at night, when you're alone in the flickering glow of a single candle, you remember the fields you left behind, the rush of the river in your old village. You feel the ache of homesickness, but you know that this is the life you've been given, the life you'll make your own. Because in the medieval world, a marriage is a bridge between kingdoms and a test of the heart's quiet endurance. And you'll learn to walk that bridge with grace, one careful step at a time. Children come quickly in the medieval world or not at all, and they bring with them a tangle of blessings and burdens that no wedding vow can predict. You learn early that your children are as much a part of your marriage contract as the cows and land that sealed the deal. Each cry of a newborn echoes through the stone halls like a prayer and a promise. But there's no guarantee of safety in a world where fever lurks in every cold wind and childbirth itself is a dance with death. Historians still argue whether medieval mothers had more power in the nursery than at the hearth, but you know that every breath your child takes feels like a victory snatched from the hungry dark. A fringe tidbit to warm your heart: Some medieval mothers tied small bells to their children's cradles, a charm to chase away restless spirits and bring sweet dreams. You find yourself listening for those tiny chimes in the night, the music of hope and fear woven together. Your first child comes with the bright cry of a spring morning, your arms trembling as you hold the warm weight of a future that's more than just your own. You see your husband's eyes soften for a moment, pride and relief flickering across his face before duty calls him back to the endless accounting of fields and taxes. But you're the one who holds the hearth together, who watches over each small breath and coos each small song. You learn to mend linen with one hand and cradle a feverish child with the other, your heart never still even when the house is quiet. Outside your door, the world is already marking your children's place in its endless game. Neighbors gossip about whose fields your sons will tend, which merchant's daughter your daughters will wed. Even before they can speak, their futures are bartered in whispers and glances, a web of promises that stretches farther than your arms can reach. You find small joys in the chaos, the way your daughter's hair curls like the edge of a summer bloom, the solemn way your son stacks stones in the yard as if he's already building castles in his dreams. These are the threads of your heart, woven into the tapestry of your marriage, proof that even in a world that weighs everything in coins and land, love has its own quiet language. And yet, you never forget that each child is a stake in a future you'll never fully control. Inheritance laws and bloodlines matter here. Every child, a link in a chain that can bind your family together or tear it apart. You watch your husband's face as he counts the children at the table, the calculation in his eyes mingling with the father's pride. Because in the medieval world, your children are more than your heart, they're your legacy. They're the promises you make to a land that demands so much and gives so little. And as you tuck them into bed each night, your voice a soft prayer in the darkness, you know that you're weaving those promises with every word, every breath, every silent vow. Years slip by as quietly as mist on a river, and before you know it, you're a seasoned wife, a mother, a woman who has seen enough to know that in the medieval world, marriage is never simple. It's a dance of duty and longing, of heavy days and fleeting joys, a story that begins in the cradle and ends wherever the final toll of the church bell finds you. You've watched your children grow like saplings around the hearth, their laughter echoing in halls that once seemed so cold. You've learned to keep the peace when the manor's walls feel too close, to find your own quiet corners where the fire burns brightest. Historians still argue whether medieval marriages had room for tenderness, but you know that sometimes, in the smallest gestures, love can flicker even in the most unlikely places. A fringe tidbit that warms your heart: in some villages, it was said that if a couple shared a bowl of sweet milk on their wedding anniversary, their love would stay as fresh as the morning dew. You wonder if that's true, if love can really be kept alive with nothing more than a shared sip and a soft smile. You've seen your husband's hands grow rougher with work and age, seen the lines deepen at the corners of his eyes. You've learned the unspoken language of glances across a crowded hall, the way his touch can still make your breath catch even after all these years. The world outside your door may be harsh, but in these quiet moments you find a softness that no lord or priest can take away. But you've also seen the cost of these unions. You've watched friends vanish behind convent walls, seen too many women forced to bow their heads and swallow their grief. You've felt the weight of expectation in every meal you served, every smile you forced when your heart was weary. In the medieval world, love is not a promise, it's a gamble, and sometimes the stakes are higher than you ever imagined. As you sit by the hearth in the deepening dusk, the fire painting your face in shades of gold and shadow, you feel the quiet triumph of survival. You're still here. You've weathered the storms of duty and the small rebellions of the heart. You've found your place in a world that never asked what you wanted, and you've made it yours anyway. In the medieval world, marriage is a tangle of faith and fear, of whispered prayers and loud feasts. It's the echo of your footsteps in the halls of your husband's manor, the soft murmur of your children's breath as they sleep. It's the sharp sting of a slap in the stocks, and the gentle warmth of a hand pressed into yours in the darkness. And through it all, you've learned that even here, even now, there is a place for love. A small flickering flame that might not banish the cold entirely, but is enough to warm your heart as the night closes in. The fire burns low, the crackle of the last embers soft against the hush of night. You lean back, the weight of the years settling around your shoulders like a worn cloak. The medieval world might be gone, the manor walls crumbled into dust, but the echoes of those vows still linger in the quiet of your heart. You close your eyes and let the stories fade into the gentle hum of your own breath. The laughter of wedding feasts, the soft murmur of prayers at dawn, the heavy footsteps of duty that march through the years, they're all part of the tapestry that makes you who you are. You've walked these halls with a careful grace, learned to bend without breaking, to find strength in the small joys that glow like embers in the dark. Outside, the world still turns. Stars wheel overhead, the moon, a silent witness to the quiet triumph of survival. You let the memory of those medieval brides slip away, replaced by the soft comfort of your own heartbeat, steady and true. In the end, marriage then and no is a journey of two hearts, learning to move in time with each other, even when the music is nothing but the sigh of the wind in the eaves. You let that thought settle into your bones, a soft balm against the echoes of old songs and old promises. So rest easy now, dear listener. Let the flickering warmth of the fire guide you into dreams as soft as the down of a winter quilt. You've walked the long road of medieval marriage, seen its shadows and its light. And now, in the hush of the night, you can let it all drift away. End of script. Sweet dreams,